Hi everyone, Miss Meek here, and today we're going to be talking about absolute value. Absolute value. Absolute value is how far a number lives from zero. So it is the distance a number lives, not line, number lives from zero on a number line. It's how far a number lives from zero on the number line. So let's take a look at what that looks like. Here is our number line, and they want us to find the absolute value of 2. Now, those bars right here, these lines right here, those are called absolute value bars. So those are the symbols, the mathematical symbols, that lets us know that we are looking for the absolute value. When you write these bars on your paper, make sure that you make them nice and big and tall and dark, because if you don't, they're going to look like ones. So this is not the number 121. This is the absolute value of 2. So make sure that you write those bars nice and dark so that you don't accidentally mistake your number as something else. Now, how far does 2 live from 0? Well, we know that 2 is right here, or that 0 is right here, and here is 2. We just want to count the distance from 0 to 2. So that is 1 space and 2 spaces. So the absolute value of 2 is 2 spaces. It's a distance. It's how far the number lives from 0. Okay, let's try another one. Number 2 here is the absolute value of negative 3. The absolute value of negative 3. So negative 3 is over here on the left side of 0. And so let's count the spaces. We have 1 space, 2 spaces, 3 spaces. So the absolute value, how far a number lives from 0 of negative 3, is 3 spaces. Now notice that on both of these numbers, both of these answers, these absolute values, that distance was positive. And so that's a big thing for you to, a big connection to make, is that absolute value is never negative. Absolute value is always a positive amount of spaces. When I talk about the distance you travel, you don't say, oh, well, I live negative 3 miles from school. No, you say, I live 3 miles from school. That's the distance you live from school. And so absolute value is never negative. It is going to be a positive quantity and amount. Let's take it up a step. We can add and subtract with absolute value. So let's take a look here at number 1. First of all, I have the absolute value of negative 4 plus the absolute value of a 5. So we need to solve those absolute values. Well, how far does negative 4 live from 0? It lives 4 spaces. So the absolute value of negative 4 is 4 spaces. Now, how far does 5 live from 0? What is the absolute value of 5? Well, 5 lives 5 spaces from 0. So essentially, what we're doing here is we're adding those spaces together. What is 5 plus 4? 5 plus 4 is 9. So our final answer is 9. Now in number 2, you may notice that that amount is written differently. It's not written like how it was in number 1, where we had to find the absolute value of each individual number. On number 2, they want us to subtract first. So we have to do our operation first. So what is 9 minus 6? Well, 9 minus 6 is 3. But we haven't solved the absolute values yet. So those absolute value bars are still there. So once we subtract, now we have to solve for the absolute value. So how many spaces does 3 live from 0? Well, 3 lives 3 spaces from 0. So our final answer is 3. Now, number 3 looks kind of tricky and kind of weird, so let's talk about that. We can have negatives outside of our absolute value, and that's what's happening here. So what's happening is we need to figure out how far -4 lives from 0. So what is the absolute value of -4? Well, -4 lives 4 spaces from 0. So I took care of those those absolute value bars and solved the question. However, we have this little negative out here, and what he's doing is he's hanging around kind of like a magnet. He is hanging around ready to stick to whatever comes out of our absolute value answer. And so that little negative is going to actually stick to our 4 and make our final answer a -4. And you may be thinking, Miss Meek, you just said on the previous paper that you can never have a negative absolute value. Like your answers are always going to be positive. Well, yes, absolute value is always a positive quantity. It's always a positive amount, all right? And if you saw, my absolute value here was 4. It was a positive amount. It was that little negative that was waiting to come and stick to whatever came out of my absolute values. That is what made my final answer negative. One last thing, warning, don't confuse absolute value with opposites. In a previous video over integers and opposites, we talked about what an opposite is. An opposite is numbers that live at equal distance from 0. So for example, if I wanted to talk about the number 4, it lives 1, 2, 3, 4 spaces from 0. Its opposite is going to live the same distance, just going to the left of 0. So 1, 2, 3, 4. So the opposite of a positive 4 is a -4. They live an equal amount of distance. Absolute value talks about how far one single number lives from 0. So for example, if I wanted to know what is the absolute value of, -1, well, I would count just that amount of distance. -1 lives 1 space from 0. So the absolute value of -1 would equal 1, while opposites are two numbers that live the same distance from 0, just in opposite directions. So don't get that confused, because that can be kind of confusing. If you have any other questions or want to learn more about opposites, please watch my integer and opposites video that is posted in my YouTube channel, and hopefully that will help refresh your memory on how opposites work. All right, that is the end of our absolute value mini lesson here. I hope that it helps you understand that absolute value is how far a number lives from 0. All right, I'll be talking to you later. Bye.